Hi everyone, this is Miss Longley, and we're going to continue looking at the 5 evolutionary forces and what causes a population to evolve. So for this, there's 2 different ways that you can set this up. One of them being continue taking your notes in your packet, or a more visual way that I find helpful in helping me remember the 5 evolutionary forces is I use my fingers to help me remember the terms. So if you feel like that might be helpful for you, what I would recommend is taking your notebook, tracing your hand, and what we're going to do is write each of the terms on our fingers, and you can put the definitions right above the hand. So go ahead and pause the video, and I'll meet you back here. All right, so we're going to start off with our first term, and that is called genetic drift. So genetic drift, we're going to use our pinky to represent this term. And what this means is it is changes in the gene pool, the allele frequencies, due to random factors. So the allele frequencies are changing because of some random event. Now that event could be a natural disaster like a hurricane wiping out a population, or it could also be something like disease wiping out a population, or it could be overhunting. There's a wide variety of reasons why a population might undergo these changes. The reason why we call it genetic drift and we're using the pinky finger is because it has the greatest impact on small populations. So if you look at this image below, you can see that our original population, the parent population, we've got some individuals that are blue, yellow, and red. As a result of some natural disaster, disease, whatever it may be, it has created a bottleneck, a drastic reduction in the original population. As a result, only a few individuals survive. Those that survive are going to be the ones that continue on passing on their traits to their future offspring. But because of the small number of surviving individuals, our genetic diversity here is very low. So as a result, we may see a lot of inbreeding, and we also might see an increase in mutations. So let's take a look at how we can remember this. So your pinky, remember, is the smallest digit on your hand, and so genetic drift affects the small populations the most. Sometimes we call this bottleneck effect or the founder's effect. Another way of thinking of founder's effect is that if a group of birds migrated over to an island where they have never lived before and they start to establish their population on that new island, that would be called a founder's effect. So a small group of individuals reproducing, passing on their traits, that is the founder's effect. A real life example here that has experienced the bottleneck effect is the cheetah population. They've been overhunted for many years for their fur coats. As a result, their gene pool has been drastically reduced. They have less genetic diversity because they're a small group of cheetahs. Although protocols have been put in place to allow the population to rebound, it's a little too late. Because they have little genetic diversity, there's a lot of inbreeding that's happening with these cheetahs, and as a result of these mutations that are popping up in their gene pool, it has actually led to slower muscle movement. So as a result of us overhunting cheetahs, we have basically caused them to become slower and slower in speed, which is unfortunate. So let's take a look at the next example. So this is called non-random mating. We're going to use the ring finger to represent this one. So non-random mating means that mates are chosen due to their specific colorful appearance and traits. So there's 2 examples of this. This can happen in sexual selection or artificial selection. So basically what this means is females often choose males to mate with based on like whether they have a lot of color to them. So think about birds with their colorful feathers. Oftentimes females are more camouflage and bland colors, where males are very colorful and bright. Another traits that they might have is their ability to like make a nest or their ability to gather food. Females are looking for those traits, and if they like what they find, they will mate with that individual. So that is what non-random mating means, is that you're specifically choosing your mate, therefore their DNA, to pass on your genetic DNA onto your offspring. So it's not random, it's actually non-random mating because you're specifically choosing that partner. So how do we remember it? Think of your ring fingers often where people place wedding rings on. And so non-random mating means individuals are actually choosing their mates. So a lot of species do this where they're looking for specific traits to mate with so that they can ensure that those advantageous traits are passed on to their future offspring. All right, our third one, mutation. So mutations goes on the middle finger. And mutations, we've seen this one before. This is random changes in DNA that create new alleles. So again, this just happens randomly where a nucleotide changes. So in this one here, we can see that the nucleotide thymine has changed to cytosine as a result. And so this can play a role in transcription and translation by producing a new type of protein. So how to remember it? Think of your middle finger, starts with the letter M, and so does mutation. So I got a picture here of red hair. Red hair is actually a result of a mutation happening where it was one little nucleotide that changed, and that's where red hair has come from. All right, our fourth one is gene flow. Very similar to the term genetic drift, but it is different. So gene flow, we're going to use our pointer finger to represent this term. Alleles are moving between populations due to migration. So keyword here is we got populations that are migrating and kind of mixing with each other and then possibly sticking together, or they might depart and go off to their different locations later. So it's looking at entering or exiting of a population. So here in this picture, you can see we have two populations of beetles. We got the green ones and the brown ones. We see one brown individual beetle is actually leaving the population as a result. That does change the allele frequencies of this population of the brown beetles. But by entering into the green beetle population, you're now mixing and introducing new alleles. So that is gene flow. Here's another example of this. We have some great white shark populations, some that are based in San Francisco and some that are based right off of Baja California. These two populations do migrate together and kind of basically mate and breed right in the southern Pacific Ocean, and then they do return back to their original locations of San Fran and Baja California. So that's another example of great shark migration. We're introducing new alleles from different populations. So that's gene flow. So how do you remember it? Well, think of your pointer finger can point in the direction that the alleles are moving to. So kind of think about where is that gene flow at. Here's just another example. We have some deer separated by a mountain range. However, there is a pass that they're allowed to cross over. So here we have, we'll just call them the red dot deer. So the red dot deer are on one side, and we have the blue dot deer on the opposite. Two of the red dot deer cross over that geographic barrier, and so now their genes, their alleles are going to be mixing with the blue dot deer. All right, here's our last one, and this one we've actually seen before. So your thumb is going to be represented by natural selection. So again, here's our natural selection definition. Those best suited to the environment are more likely to survive and reproduce. And this is the only process that actually causes life to adapt and change. So we're putting some kind of environmental pressure on this population to cause it to adapt, which means that we're going to see a change. Some of the individuals are going to have some advantage, and therefore they're the ones that are more likely to survive and reproduce. So in this case here, we see some bacteria represented by the yellow dots. There are a few individuals that are red, meaning that they are resistant bacteria, showing variation here. As a result of someone taking antibiotics, the whole goal is the antibiotics to kill off the bacteria population. However, these antibiotics are not strong enough to kill the resistant bacteria, therefore they survive, they are able to reproduce, and now over time we're going to see a greater population of resistant bacteria. So how do you remember natural selection? Well, think of your thumb can indicate good or bad. If an individual survives and reproduces, that's a good thing. That's a thumbs up. They're passing on their traits to their offspring. If they don't survive, that's bad or sad in a way. So that's a thumbs down. So that's natural selection represented by the thumb. So overall, if we come back to our 5 terms here, remember Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is broken when one or more of these 5 forces of evolution is taking place over several generations. So we do have to notice change happening over several generations. So that tells us that the population is evolving. So if we go back to the rock pocket mouse population, it was natural selection that was causing the population to evolve. What was the actual thing? It was the predators that were selecting the light mice to eat because they're easy to spot on the dark lava rocks, and the dark mice were able to camouflage, therefore hide and be able to survive and reproduce, which is why we saw a change in the alleles, an increase in the dark fur alleles. So that is it for today's screencast. Thanks for watching.